you bought eggs this morning, maybe yesterday, and somewhere between cracking one open and tossing the shell, you didn't think twice about where it came from. Most people don't. But here's the thing. For every single egg in that carton, a male chick was born. And in almost every case, that chick never saw day 2 of its life. Not because it was sick or something went wrong, but because it was male. Every year, nearly 8 billion male chicks are killed within hours of hatching. That's not a typo. 8 billion. And the reason it keeps happening, the reason you've probably never heard about it, goes deeper than you'd expect. It's not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It's economics, genetics, and a century of decisions that quietly split the chicken into 2 completely different creatures, one built to lay eggs and one built to be eaten. And the males of the laying breed, they got left with nothing. To understand why male chickens mostly don't end up on your plate, you have to go back before the supermarket, before the factory farm, to a time when chickens were just chickens. 100 years ago, the bird you kept in your yard did a little bit of everything. The hens laid eggs, the roosters fertilized them, and when a bird got old or you had too many males, you ate it. Simple. A rooster would go in a pot with some wine, cook low and slow for hours, and come out tender enough to pull apart with a fork. The French even named a dish after this exact practice: coq au vin, rooster in wine. The acid in the wine was what made tough rooster meat edible. But then something changed, and it changed quietly over about 30 years in a way that most people living through it didn't fully notice. In the 1940s, an A&P grocery store chain sponsored a competition in the United States called the Chicken of Tomorrow contest. The goal was simple: breed a bird that grew faster, produced more meat per bird, and cost less to raise. Breeders from across the country entered. Charles Vantress, a poultry farmer from California, won in 1948 and again in 1951, using a cross between Cornish and New Hampshire chickens that packed on muscle in a way nobody had seen before. That contest lit the fuse on industrial poultry. Within a generation, the Cornish cross became the dominant meat bird in America, growing from hatch to slaughter weight in 6 weeks instead of 6 months. By the 1970s, Tyson Foods had acquired the Vantress bloodlines. By 2000, 2 companies, Aviagen and Cobb Vantress, controlled the genetics of almost every broiler chicken raised on Earth. At the same time, egg farmers were doing the same thing with laying breeds. They bred hens to produce more eggs per year, not to put on muscle. The 2 paths diverged completely. A modern egg-laying breed, like a white leghorn hen, is lean, light, and produces around 300 eggs a year. A modern broiler, like the Ross 308 or the Cobb 500, gets enormous fast. They don't look like the same animal anymore, and in a real genetic sense, they're not. Here's where the math gets brutal. When a hatchery incubates eggs for an egg-laying operation, roughly half of those eggs hatch male. That's just biology. And those male chicks, the males of the laying breed, they can't lay eggs. That's obvious. But they also can't bulk up fast enough to be worth raising for meat. They're the wrong genetics entirely. Raising one to slaughter weight would take months longer than a broiler and cost far more in feed, with a fraction of the meat at the end. So the industry made a decision decades ago, and it's still the decision being made today. Within hours of hatching, those male chicks are sorted out and killed. The most common method is a machine called a macerator, which uses high-speed rotating blades. In the United States alone, that works out to roughly 300 million male chicks a year. Globally, according to a 2024 report by Faunalytics, the number is 7.83 billion. That's more individuals than there are humans alive on Earth, killed every year at 1 day old. And here's the part that most people don't know. This happens in organic egg operations. It happens in free-range operations. It happens whether your eggs come in a Whole Foods carton with a picture of a sunny field on the front or a generic store brand. The breed separation happened at the hatchery, long before the farm. Only 11% of consumers are aware that chick culling happens, according to the same Faunalytics study. Of those who learn about it for the first time, 73% say they believe the industry should find an alternative. So why can't the industry just raise the male layer chicks for meat instead of killing them? The short answer is that it costs more than the meat is worth. A male white leghorn chick takes months to reach a body weight that a broiler hits in 6 weeks. The feed conversion ratio, how much feed goes in versus how much meat comes out, is far worse. You'd spend more raising it than you'd ever make selling it. An estimate published by University of Copenhagen researcher Rebecca Rutt puts the annual global cost of culling itself at roughly $7 billion. The industry is spending that much just on the killing, because raising the chicks to market weight would cost even more. But that same economic logic creates a strange reality inside broiler operations. When a hatchery raises birds specifically for meat, like a Cornish cross operation, incubation, they hatch males and females together in what's called a straight run. Those males do get raised and eaten. About half of the chicken breasts in your grocery store came from a male bird. The distinction isn't male versus female, it's the breed. And if you've ever eaten a rooster, you've noticed it tastes different. The meat is darker, denser, leaner. It needs long, slow cooking to get tender. Before industrial poultry took over, that was the entire point of dishes like coq au vin. The rooster's toughness was a problem to be solved with hours of braising in wine. The acid broke down the muscle fibers. The result was richer and more flavorful than anything a young broiler could produce. Rooster meat is still eaten widely across parts of Asia, Latin America, and West Africa. In the Philippines, a dish called tinolang manok traditionally uses a whole rooster simmered with ginger and green papaya. In Haiti, roosters are considered premium birds prized above hens. In Korea, samgyetang, a ginseng chicken soup, can be made with a young rooster for a deeper flavor. These traditions never split the chicken into two different creatures. They kept using the whole bird. Western industrial food did something different. It turned chicken into a single product optimized for volume, speed, and uniformity, and in doing so, made half of every laying hen hatch economically invisible. The really strange part of this story is what happens when a country tries to change it. Germany became the first country in the world to ban male chick culling on January 1, 2022. The law came after years of legal challenges, including a court ruling that found culling male chicks violated Germany's animal cruelty law, which requires a reasonable cause to end an animal's life. The court agreed that economic inconvenience didn't qualify, but it also allowed the practice to continue temporarily until alternative technology became available. That technology already existed. It's called in ovo sexing, and the idea is almost elegantly simple. On day 9 of incubation, a laser drills a hole less than 1/3 of a millimeter wide in the eggshell. A tiny sample of fluid is extracted from a membrane inside the egg called the allantois. That fluid in female embryos contains a hormone called estrone sulfate. In males, it doesn't. A color change marker identifies the sex within seconds. The hole is sealed with beeswax. The male eggs are removed before a chick ever forms. A German company called Selig Tea, founded in 2018, commercialized this process under the brand name Respect. By 2024, in ovo sexing covered around 70% of Germany's egg market. France followed Germany's lead, banning chick culling by the end of 2022. Austria has moved in the same direction. The economics are more favorable than you'd expect. In ovo sexing adds roughly 2 euro cents per egg to production costs. A 2023 survey of 1,012 American adults by Cultivate Insights found that 71% of respondents said they'd pay a premium for eggs produced without chick culling, averaging 65 cents more per dozen. The willingness to pay is 20 times higher than the actual cost of the technology. In the United States, chick culling remains standard practice. As of 2024, Kipster, a commercial egg producer, announced plans to adopt in ovo sexing technology at its main hatchery, a first for the American market. But it's one company. The broader industry hasn't moved. There's a specific kind of discomfort that comes from learning about a system you're already participating in. You didn't design it, you didn't vote for it, but every egg carton connects you to it in some way. The chicken in your fridge didn't come from nowhere. It came from a set of decisions made by breeders, grocery chains, and economists over the last 100 years, decisions that were never really about what tasted best or what made biological sense. They were about what could be scaled, what could be standardized, what could move through a system at the highest possible volume. And the male chick is what fell through the cracks of that logic. Not because it's dangerous, not because it can't be eaten. It can. People have been eating roosters for thousands of years. It fell through because it didn't fit the slot. The slot was optimized for something else. The technology to fix this cost less than 1 cent per egg. It exists. It works. Germany proved that. What's lacking isn't the science, it's the signal from the market. And the market can't send that signal if people don't know there's a question being asked. There's an old French recipe that begins with a rooster and a bottle of wine and several hours of patience. It was designed for a bird that had lived long enough to be tough, and the whole point was to respect that toughness instead of trying to hide it. That recipe still exists. The bird it was designed for essentially doesn't, not in commercial food systems anyway. What replaced it is a bird that lives 6 weeks, never crows, never fights, never does anything except convert feed into protein as efficiently as possible. Whether that's progress depends on what you think food is for. What isn't debatable is that nearly 8 billion animals a year are killed within a day of being born, not because they're sick, not because they did something wrong, but because a decision made decades ago in a breeding competition created a world in which they have no economic role. The next time you crack an egg open, that's what's sitting on the other side of it. Not guilt, just weight. The kind that comes from knowing something you didn't know before. If you want to support this channel, subscribing takes 2 seconds and it genuinely makes a difference.